Open spaces for New York City's and New York City's residents. It's important for our health and for our public safety. COVID has also shined a light on the fact that the city has disinvested in parks for more than 40 years, exacerbating tragic inequities.
Louder, please.
Exacerbating tragic inequities in our park system. This is not a failure of our parks workers or our parks department. It is a failure of our elected leaders. In response to these conditions and calls from advocates like all of us, the mayor and many city council members had the bold vision to commit to a clear policy change to dedicate 1% of the city budget for parks. That would be a generational transformation for our city. Yet the mayor's preliminary budget cuts the Parks Department by $60 million. This at a time when New Yorkers are demanding a safer and healthier city, and when we are relying on parks more than we ever have before. New York City's Parks Department has been operating on fumes for decades with no margin for error. This became incredibly evident 2 years ago when the budget was cut again. Within weeks, our park system was in the worst condition it had been in 2 decades. New Yorkers deserve more.
That's right.
Our parks employees deserve more. Now is the time to follow through on the bold commitments our candidates made when they were running for office. And to invest in the health and safety of our city and to its future. I thank you all for coming out. I want to turn it over to Julie Tai, our colleague and partner in the
Podium that's like too tall. So I'm Julie Tai, I'm president of the New York League of Conservation Voters. I want to thank all the council members and borough presidents and all of you here. Parks are important for recreation, but parks and green spaces are also one of our most valuable environmental assets. They improve air quality, they promote shared community spaces, they improve public health, and they provide climate resiliency by capturing almost 2 billion gallons of stormwater every year. They are also major sources of the city's urban tree canopy that mitigate climate change. They lower air temperature by up to 9 degrees. They cut air conditioning use by 30%. They can reduce heating energy use by another 20 to 50%. And they remove 1,300 tons of pollutants from the atmosphere every year. Despite all of these incredible functions, the New York City Parks Department receives only about 0.5% of the total city budget. And that's why we came together with DC 37 and New Yorkers for Parks to found the Play Fair campaign. If ever there was a time to make the environment and parks a priority, it's now, when all New Yorkers need fresh air, need recreation, they need natural resilient protection from climate hazards. Last year, we saw so many make commitments, as Adam pointed out, in the political season to allocate 1% of the city budget to parks. It's our top priority for the Play Fair campaign. What do we want?
Parks.
When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! Now we hope the City Council will hold up to this commitment as the budget is negotiated and work with the mayor to make sure that funding is baseline so that parks get consistent funding every year. What do we want?
1%.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
1%.
When do we want it?
Now.
Right. 1% for parks was once a dream of ours that quickly turned into campaign promise. Now let's turn it into reality. Thank you so much for coming today. Let's do it. Next we have from DC 37, Dilsey Beck.
Borough President, all the people that came out, all the council people that came out, and the chair, and the Play Fair Coalition members. I want to say thank you. I'm here today to urge the mayor to restore the baseline in the 100 CPWs, which are the city park workers, and the parks departments in the fiscal year for 2023. We are thankful that the city council provided the funding last year for these positions, but the administration did not include them in the budget this year. Additionally, I'm urging the mayor to restore the full line of seasonal workers who are assigned to work in parks, pools, and beaches. With the loss of federal stimulation funds on June 30th, this will have a dire effect on the cleanliness of parks, pools, and beaches. I got a short speech. We need to step up to the city to continue funding the seasonal lines. My members are not viewed as frontline workers, but they actually are.
That's right. Yeah.
They showed up every day at the height of the pandemic to ensure the parks were clean and free of garbage.
Right.
While many places were closed to the public, parks were open to everyone to enjoy. Outdoor spaces were the only spaces individuals and families could go. My members stepped up to ensure parks were clean and neat for park goers. In order to avoid us coming back every year, begging the administration with hat in hand, we urge the mayor to fund parks at 1% of the total city budget. This, once again, we are grateful for the city council cash support to the parks workers and stand with them to restore these essential workers. We urge the mayor to play fair and fund the parks at 1% of the city budget. Thanks, everybody.
1%. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now. And when do we want it? Now. And when do we want it? Now. And when do we want it? Now.
Hey there, everybody. I don't really have anything prepared, but you guys got to know this smaller group with just less press and everything. You guys are the smart ones that know the value of parks, right? And just thanks so much for all your support from everyone from the union, from East 37, and New Yorkers for Parks. Thank you so much for all your support. As one of the pairs of the booth, like I say, one of the pairs of boots on the ground, I'm one of the most thankful people here. Thank you, guys.
Next up.
My name is Marlena Giga from DC 37 Local 983.
Come on
I want to
now.
thank everybody for coming. We urge the mayor and city council restore the budget. We are responsible for 30,000 acres that are used every day. Our PEP officers patrol the parks and keep the parks safe. Our park rangers provide presentations of all sorts to all communities. We live in the communities that we serve. We are dedicated every day to the Parks Department. Please restore the funding. Thank you.
What do we want? Now. And what do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? 1%. What do we want? Now. What do we want? 1%. What do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now.
Good morning, everyone. Is Play Fair Coalition in the house? 37 in the house? What do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? 1%. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. All right, I love that energy. That's good parks energy right there. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shaker Krishnan. I'm the council member for Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, Queens, and the chair of the Committee on Parks and Recreation. Big thank you to the Play Fair Coalition for showing up today. And we are here because, as we've heard over and over again, our green spaces, our parks, are the most essential spaces in our city. They were essential for our public health, for our mental health. They are essential for racial justice. Because when you look across this city, you see neighborhoods like mine in Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, which is ranked 50 out of 51 when it comes to council districts with park space. You look at the urban heat island effect and the way it affects communities in the South Bronx with hotter climates than they do on the Upper West Side, for example. Because
because we don't have enough trees in communities of color. When we talk about this issue, we need to talk about the way in which our parks are essential. And what we need is a budget that reflects exactly that. We need $1 billion or 1% for parks. That is the only way that we can ensure that parks are treated as the social justice issue that they are. That is the only way to ensure that every single community benefits from having green space, from park space, from more trees. This is an issue affecting our climate. It is an issue affecting our immigrant communities. It is an issue affecting our health and well-being as a city. And that's why we are out here today, to send the message loud and clear that what we need, if we have a budget that is to reflect our values, if we are to have a budget that reflects how essential our parks are, then we need a budget that has $1 billion or 1% for parks. And we are going to fight for that together. Brevemente en español, mi nombre es Shaker Krishnan, soy el concejal de este distrito de Jackson Heights y Elmhurst 25 y el distrito con el menos espacio verde por toda la ciudad. También soy el líder del comité de parques en el consejo municipal. Y estamos aquí porque sabemos nosotros que parques, los espacios verdes, los árboles son esenciales, fueron esenciales durante la pandemia y serán esenciales. Y necesitamos un presupuesto que refleja ese valor de nuestros espacios verdes, con $1 billón para nuestros parques, nuestros árboles, nuestros espacios verdes. Este es un asunto de justicia racial, de salud pública, de salud mental y para el bienestar para nuestra ciudad. Así que luchamos juntos para asegurar que tengamos esos fondos adecuados, $1 billón para estos parques, para nuestros parques. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Play Fair Coalition, to New York Parks. Pay every parking! Pay every parking! Pay every parking! But I want to do a big shout out to the Play Fair Coalition, to New Yorkers for Parks, to the League of Conservation Voters, to every group who was here, to DC 37, to Borough President Mark Levine, the former chair of the Parks Committee, this fight for so many years, and to every single one of my colleagues who is standing here today. Thank you all so much. Let's do this.
Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! Whose parks? Our parks! Whose parks? Our parks! Whose parks? Our parks!
That's funny with me to every rally.
I love it!
Michelle Keller, retiring.
Bueno, hermano, no me dijeron que esto iba a ser en español, pero ya que usted empezó, vamos a seguir hablando. Actually, this speech will be in Hebrew. You guys know yada. If you love parks, make some noise. If you love parks, gardeners, make some noise. If you love parks, maintenance workers, make some noise. If you love temp officers, make some noise. If you love urban park rangers, make some noise. If you love DC 37, make some noise. Look at this coalition. I wish you could see this crowd. Thank you. And the heckling's very good as well. Don't stop. Come on, we like it.
You like this?
Thank.
What is that?
Parks that I said temp officers. All right. Calm down. Thank you, New Yorkers for Parks. Thank you, League of Conservation Voters. This coalition is amazing and powerful. And anyone who disregards us is in for a rude awakening. This coalition has won repeated victories in the budget, and we are committed to doing it again. Not for a radical demand. We are calling for the parks budget to be restored to something close to its historic levels. Until the 1970s, 1.5% of the city's budget was devoted to parks. And then something started to happen. Every time the city had tough economic times, the first thing they would cut is the Parks Department. Because they said parks are a luxury. Entirely false. But it gets worse. When the economy got better, they didn't restore the parks budget, they kept the cuts. And so over the decades, we have now been shipped down to 0.5% of the budget. 0.5%. And I remind you that parks are 14% of the landmass of the city. And what we're often told is, it's okay, we're gonna innovate, we're gonna do more with less. That's not what happens. We're doing less with less. At a certain point, there is no alternative but to cut services in parks, maintenance in parks, PEP officers, gardening, everything that we need for a thriving system. And you see it out there in the parks. Somehow, despite this, our parks workers have been heroic. What they've done over the past 2 years is awe-inspiring. Parks workers and our park system is one of the things that help save our city. And as my dear friend and sister Dulcie Ben said, parks workers are frontline workers. And they have been there for us over these past 2 years. We have an obligation now to build, coming out of this crisis, to build the park system that this city needs and deserves. This is not just about a luxury item that's pretty to look at. This is environmental justice. This is resiliency. This is economic development. This is community building. This is clean air. This is social justice, as Shaker said. This is all these things, but we need the budget to reflect that. We need a win in the budget to build the park system the city needs and deserves. So, here's your question. What do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! Let's do this. Let's win this.
So who's got the power?
We got the
power. What kind of power?
People power.
Who's got the power?
We got the power.
What kind of power?
People power.
Who's got the power?
We got the power.
What kind of power?
People power.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm excited to be here, right? Because this is what it's about. It's about you guys and the work that you do. And it's about us honoring their work. 1%, that's what we're talking about here. When we think about what we are willing to invest in, we need to be invested in parks. You know why? Because during the pandemic, what happened? The businesses were closed, clubs were closed, restaurants was closed, and we were all in those parks. And you know what? All these workers showed up to make sure it was safe, it was clean, and they were working double time because it was so inundated with people. And so now we need to make sure that they have the tools and the resources to get the things that they need.
Yes. That's right.
I'm Councilmember Althea Stevens. I am from the District 16 in the Boogie Down Bronx. When we talk about when we make cuts in parks, guess what parks get cut first? Guess what services get cut first? The ones in my community, the ones in my district. And so our kids suffer. Our elders suffer because they don't have the resources, because when things get cut, it doesn't get cut on the Upper West Side as much as they do in the Bronx or as often as they do. So we need to invest in the things that are important to us, like parks, like our young people, like our seniors. Our budget is a moral compass for the things that we think are important to us. And so when we don't invest in those things, we're saying this is not important to us. And it's unacceptable for us only to invest in these things when it's convenient. Because it was convenient to invest in it last year because we needed it. And if we needed it last year and we needed it a year before, we need it today. We know that park space is where young people go to connect and socialize. It's community connectors. It is where the community goes and meets each other. So I say today, let's invest in our parks. It's also about our health. How we come out and get fresh air. We talk about young people, being on the computers and all connected to the tablets. But you know why? Because our parks are not even up to date. We have so many parks that don't even have equipment for special needs young people.
So we need to invest. And it's an investment in our community, and it's an investment in our future, and it's an investment for all of us. So thank you. Give us what? 1%. Give us what? 1%. When do we want it? Now. That part.
¿Cómo estamos, familia? ¿Estamos bien?
Sí,
Well, familia, 'cause that's what we are. We're a big family. When I launched my campaign, guess what? I promised that I would fight for the 1%, and what are we doing? We're fighting for what? 1%! When do we want it? Now! My name is Marjorie Velasquez. I'm from District 13, and I think you most definitely know my district if you've ever been to Pelham Bay Park. It's the largest park in New York City, 3 times bigger than Central Park. However, when the pandemic hit, when we were asking for extra hours for our workers, we had to fight for that. We had to beg for that. Why? Because we're in the Bronx. We forget about my families. We forget about the opportunity that my husband has to recover, and so the only thing that we needed was to walk. Having the ability to go to Bicentennial Park, also in my district, where we're honoring the lives of those lost in World War II. When we're looking at the history that our parks have to give to our families, the ability to heal that our families have, especially during the height of the pandemic where everything shut down. That's what we're looking for. And as we're looking forward, we're seeing in a moment that it gets emotional because Hart Island is ours. Hart Island is our parks. And what are we giving our families? How do we say our final goodbyes for the families that are not able to see their goodbyes? For families that are not able to spend those months because they're out there on that island. Very limited access. Who are we to deny them that opportunity to be with family? That's what we're doing. We're preventing our families to be together. We're preventing our families from being honored. Let's do better. Let's be better. Let's ask this administration. No, let us. Let's demand our 1% that we need. We're fighting for one and only our families first. Siempre para nuestra familia. Y para adelante seguimos.
Now,
When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? 1%! What do you want? 1%! My name is Christopher Marte, and I represent Lower Manhattan, one of the most diverse communities in the city. In my district, you can see Chinese seniors doing Tai Chis in parks.
Yes.
You can see kids from the Smith houses practicing on the crossovers and three-point shots.
Yeah.
You can see parents and strollers in Tribeca teaching their kids about plants and what it means to have beautiful open space. But what we see time and time again is whenever the city has an opportunity to close a park, they do it immediately. They do it immediately because they don't think it really matters. But everyone behind me knows that parks matter. It matters for our seniors. It matters for our kids. It matters for the next generation. And especially now as we're dealing with the constraints of climate change and the consequences of neglect of taking care of our trees. We're facing it more than ever. And so now we need to invest 1% in our parks. I'm going to tell you a quick story about this skateboard. This skateboard has an image of Brooklyn Bridge Park. This park is now open today. This park is 1 block away from the Smith houses, where people live below the poverty line. And even though I represent a well-off district, it's the park that's right next to public housing that gets closed. And so we are demanding with this 1% is that you bring equity to this funding. And bring back our park. Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. I am Councilman Rafael Salamanca, and I represent the South Bronx. restaurants, our businesses, our jobs, but the parks remained open. Parks was our lifeline. We were able to take our kids during the day to the parks. I was able to do my Zoom meetings in the parks. I was able to have my meetings with my colleagues and my constituents in the parks because my office was closed. And at nighttime, when the clubs were closed, nightlife was in the parks. We constantly complain about our parks being dirty, the grass not being cut, not seeing a maintenance worker, not seeing a PEP officer. Who do you blame? Ourselves, the budget, because we're not providing the park department with the resources necessary so that they can maintain our parks. I'm a member of the budget negotiating team. And I'm pretty sure that there are many of my colleagues here who are also part of BNT. You have my word and my commitment that I will fight all that I can to ensure that Parks gets 1% of this year's budget.
Hello, everybody. My name's Eric Botcher. I represent Council District 3, which is Village, Chelsea, and Hell's Kitchen on the west side. And I want to thank Council Member Christian for your leadership. I've been to a lot of rallies on the steps of City Hall. I got to say, this is one of the biggest I've ever been to. That's a testament to your leadership. Thank you so much for fighting for our parks in New York City. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to focus on something very important that doesn't get talked about enough, and that's street trees. Street trees are so important, and they don't get thought about a lot, but they absorb carbon dioxide and pollutants from the air. They release oxygen. They absorb wastewater runoff, rainwater runoff. They reduce the temperatures in neighborhoods. They slow traffic. A lot of people don't know this, but street trees, traffic goes slower on tree-lined streets. But we've got whole swaths of the city with almost no street trees, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. So the city needs to be investing on lining streets with trees throughout New York City, and we're not going to do it without an increase. We're certainly not going to do it with the cuts that are being proposed. The cuts that are being proposed are wrong. We have to bring funding up. I didn't know before today that the city spent 1.5% of the budget on parks in the 1970s. We got to get back up to that level. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. Let's go do it. Thanks, everybody.
And when do we want it? Now! What do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? 1%! What do we want?
Hola, good morning. My name is Alexa Aviles, and I am the proud representative of District 38, Sunset Park, Red Hook, in South Brooklyn. I have to give a special shout out to all the parkies in the house. Thank you for all the work you've done. My sister is a parky, so I hear all the stories. I know how hard you work. We're backbreaking labor, and it is true. Our parks workers have been essential workers even before the pandemic. Because our health and wellness, our status as a civilized society is connected with our parks and how we use and shepherd our green space in our land. I come from a community that is an environmental justice community. And what that means is that we have more polluting infrastructure in our community than we have infrastructure that supports our health and well-being. We are 49 on the list of communities that don't have enough green space. I'll tell you what we do have a lot of. We have a lot of things that are killing us, like the BQE. We have a whole lot of particles in our air. We have one of the highest asthma rates, one of the highest lung cancer rates. The importance
of the situation. Well, my demand and our demand here is that, Mr. Mayor, you cannot lead into a transformation without fully funding our parks. We want 1%. We want 1%, and that's just a start. But I will tell you this, we cannot have public safety if we do not invest in our people, in our parks. I implore you, I implore my colleagues, I implore the mayor, I implore all of us to keep the pressure on, because safety, racial justice, gender justice, climate change is all connected to our parks. So let's make sure you can go to other cities and you see how they invest in their parks and they feel proud, and you come here and it's a damn shame. So what do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now!
Hello, I'm Julie Menon. I'm the council member. Hi, I'm Julie Menon, council member from District 5 in Manhattan. I first of all want to thank my colleague, council member Krishna, and I want to thank New Yorkers for Parks. DC 37! And the whole Play Fair Coalition and the League of Conservation Voters. So I represent a district that's 47 on the list, and the East Harlem part of my district has one of the highest childhood asthma rates, one of the highest childhood obesity rates, and yet one of the lowest amounts of park space. It is unacceptable. What we are asking for is so little. We are asking for 1% of this budget to go to our children, to our parks, for our seniors, for adults. This is a public health crisis. So what do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! Thank you.
It's just the Bronx is last again. That's all I'm saying. Y'all know it's true. First of all, thank you all. Thank you all for all the work. I'm going to be faithful this week, but all my words are really for you. What do we want? 1%. We want it now. And the work they do is so important. I know we talk a lot about numbers. I'm 49th, 50th, 1%, but what does that mean? What does that 1% mean? It means before the pandemic, when I was a new dad and had no idea what I was doing, where would I go with my kids? Go to the parks. And there I would see other dads who would tell me all the advice in the world, which was they also have no idea what they're doing. And you all know that's true too. But then the pandemic hit. And I think more and more people realized what that 1% could actually mean. Because where did we all take our families? We took them to the park. Where do you see older adults getting outside their homes and socializing and being with their friends? They go to the parks. Where do children go after school? They go to the parks. And in my community, what are our parks? They're oases for our families, for our older adults, for our children. But so many of our green spaces are shut off from us. So much of our equipment is old, and our workers are not given the dignity and respect that y'all deserve.
That's right.
That y'all deserve. So I want to thank the Play Fair Coalition, Councilmember Krishna, wherever you are. Oh, he had to do his job. All right, because this is not about numbers. It's not about 1 billion, 1%. It's about people. It's about the people we represent. It's about us. It's about our families. It's about all of our families and all the people we represent. It's about everyone behind me. It is about everyone behind me who are working their butts off to make sure our parks stay those oases that we went to during the pandemic to be safe and to enjoy our lives and to socialize. And we are learning now. We know it here in the city. And we need our budget to reflect that. What do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! Thank you.
We have time for one more voice today.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. You got
Don't
this.
be.
You got this.
You got it. Yeah.
community-led organization that we formed to fight for a park underneath the Brooklyn Bridge right beside us. And in this moment of global crisis, when it feels like our streets and our subways and even our homes may not be safe, and our neighborhoods and our cities are sort of falling apart, I've been grappling with, does it make sense to fight for funding for our parks? And I am reminded of a quote that Mayor Eric Adams introduced me to by Bishop Desmond Tutu. And he said, there comes a point in time where you have to stop just pulling people out of the river. You have to go upstream and find out why they are falling in. And my message to Eric Adams is that jails are downstream and parks and building community is upstream. There is a straight line that exists between our failure to fund our parks and the crises that we find ourselves in today. And the Brooklyn Banks are a perfect example of that, because these scrappy young skaters came together and built a space for themselves, a space where they could meet strangers that became their family, a place where they could fall and dust themselves off and try again and again and again, because that's what they do. It's a place where race and age and class and gender and religion, those lines fell away and they saw each other for who they are, which is human beings. Parks, and especially the banks, are important because they are the places where we come together and we create the ties that bind. We build the relationships that we turn to in times of crisis. Parks are also where magic happens. It doesn't happen on our streets and our sidewalks. It happens where we make the place and we make the time to actually come together and share and learn and play. So where we choose to spend our money is a crystal clear indicator of our priorities as a society. And you know what? Eric Adams was 100% right. We need to go upstream. So we are here today to ask Mayor Adams to keep his word and go upstream and fund our parks.
I want to thank everybody for coming on and listen to us. Adam Ganser from New Yorkers for Parks, along with our co-founders of the Playfair Coalition. What do we want? 1%! When do we want it? Now! Thank you, everyone.